creekbeaterstv. Made possible by Butch and Cheryl King, Justin Hobbs Studio, Falcon Hooks, Baitcasters USA, Titan Tungsten, Pulse Fish Lures, and PathfinderOutfitters.com.
Hey folks, Dave here.
And this is Lawson.
This is Creek Beaters TV. Alright folks, this week on Creek Beaters TV, we're going to do a viewer requested video. Okay? We're going to compare different types of reels and tell why you would use certain reels for certain occasions, and you know, what might be benefits and what might be pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah,
you know,
different setups.
Yep.
Just kind of do a whole rundown here of everything that we got here.
What are we comparing?
Okay, so basically we got some Baitcasters. There's an older Baitcaster. We got a couple different versions and varieties of Baitcasters. We got a little closed face reel. This is just a small one. And we got the open face or spinning reel.
Spincast. Yep.
Spinning.
I think that's a Spincast too. It's just like you say, it's a
closed face and open face. Yep.
Yep. So
and
that's
then
what we're
different
gonna compare.
rods, also the different types of rods and stuff. So
yeah. And yeah,
there's all kinds of different, like the eyes and all kinds of stuff we can go over here. So
yep. So stay tuned,
and we'll be right back. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna go over some different Baitcaster, different things that you can learn about the Baitcaster. So basically, you got the basic, you got your reel, you got your drag, you got magnets that you can set. You can tighten them up or loosen them up. You also got your ball bearings and different stuff here that you can tighten up and loosen up, and that just keeps this spool from free spinning, or you can make it spin faster, you can make it spin slower, and a lot of times you adjust it to kind of prevent backlash from happening. Once you get really good, a lot of people just open them completely up and they'll just use your thumb. But to learn, when you're learning to start off, you really want to tighten those up, and there's a way to test it. You just kind of let the bait, you'll hit the button here, and you'll just let the bait drop, and once it hits the ground, you want to keep this from spinning and creating this backlash. It'll just kind of spin a little bit, so you want to adjust those accordingly. So yeah, you got your button here. You'll just keep your hand, when you cast, you just let off and just kind of slowly add tension to the line as you cast, as the bait hits the water. So yeah, you got these, and some benefits of these. They're faster. This one is they have gear ratios. This is a 5:1 ratio. So you got faster gear ratios. You got slower gear ratios, and then you got stuff like this. This is a bait runner, so you can hit this button here, and when you hit this, you can, you get a bite, you'll hear these little clicks, and you can just take it and reel it back in. So there's little things that you can do there. So yeah, they handle, what I've noticed is they handle a lot of like crankbaits, anything that you have to kind of drag through the water. I like it for top water. This is my preferred reel and rod setup, actually. I prefer that over the spin cast because they're stronger, they're faster. You don't have to, like, I don't know if you ever took like a crankbait and you're casting it out and you have a spin cast and you're kind of dragging it, and you can feel it on the rod. It kind of shakes a little bit. This kind of prevents that from happening. It's a lot smoother. Typically they last longer just because of the moving parts. You just have a button here on this, whereas to the spin cast you have to flip the bell to close it, and a lot of people will just start reeling, and it tears that reel up a lot faster. With these, another thing is you can load it with heavier line. You can use heavier lines. A lot of people will use like topwater setups where they have 60-pound braid, and you know, it handles it a lot better. If you were to put 60 pounds on this, it would, when you go to cast, it would just come apart. Like you would have a lot of loops in the lines and stuff like that. You know, I talked about the adjustments along with your drag here. So when you test your drag, this tightens it up, and this will loosen it up. This one doesn't work, but it's an older reel. But this one, you know, you'll tighten it up going backwards, and you can test it by pulling the line. If that's too tight, you just loosen it up a little bit, and you can pull it a lot easier. So always check that before you go out in the water, because sometimes if you have it too loose, you set a hook on a big fish, it'll slip, and you won't get that good hook set. But then you don't want it to be so tight to where it's gonna cause too much tension on your line and break it. I grew up fishing the spin cast a lot. Like that's just what I grew up using. So just what was it, like 4 or 5 years ago or something? I don't know. We started using Baitcasters about 4 or 5 years ago, trying to see, you know, what the craze is, like why everybody uses them, and it's a learning process. So when you learn Baitcasters, you're gonna find when you cast, it's gonna go straight down a lot. You're gonna have a lot of backlash, which is just, or a bird's nest they call it, where the spool just keeps spinning after the bait hits the tree or whatever you you throw it into. But and there's ways to get that out, and it's usually a pain in the butt. But yeah, so you got your backlashes. My advice to learn, ow, got hooked there. My advice to learn would be, what I did is I get an open field and put something kind of heavy, like a heavy sinker, not too heavy, but you know, an ounce or two, something with some weight to it. And you want to cast, and when you cast, it's almost like you're throwing into the sky instead of like to the spot. You want to throw it up a little bit, and you just get the feel for it. You know, the first few will be straight down. You'll start getting it to where you can reach out there, and then soon you'll just be casting, you know, wherever you need to cast. It does take practice though, especially if you're used to the spin casters. One of my favorite a good beginner's reel would be, it's a Abu Garcia Black Max, and they're priced pretty cheap. You know, they're about $89 to $100. You can get them at Meijer even, or Walmart or wherever. You know, go pick them up, and it comes a combo. You can line it up, and they're ready to use. And that's what I've used ever since I've had. I mean, I have different variations and different rods and stuff, but the Abu Garcia Black Max, it's a really good beginner's combo. Get you one of those. It's pretty cheap compared to a lot of other. I mean, you can pay anywhere from $100 to $700 just for the reels usually, but and typically they're more expensive than a spin cast reel, because you know they do last longer. They're made a little bit better. They have more working parts, and you can adjust it. There's different setups. A lot of people set these up different also. So you can set them up as, like what I do. Usually we'll go with a couple rods and reels, and we'll set one up on top water. And a lot of people use braided line for top water because you can put heavier line. It floats, you know. And you don't really want to use braided line for anything sinking, because the abrasion on it, like if it rubs like a rock or anything, it cuts almost immediately. So I typically stick with that for a top water setup. Then you got your your different rod weights. You got, this one is a 7-foot medium heavy, and what the heavy is how much strength it has down here, and medium means the tip. That refers to the tip. So a fast action tip usually is more stiff, whereas to a slow action it will bend a little bit more. And you know, there's all kinds of things you can do with these. People skip, you know, docks and all kinds of stuff, but you can use monofilament, you can use fluorocarbon. A lot of people use fluorocarbon. I prefer monofilament for most of my fishing. I use a, what is that called? Do you know what the name of that line is that I use? Trilene?
I use Trilene X, Trilene XT. XT
Trilene
is
XT.
extra tough and XL is extra limp. Easy casting.
Okay. I forget which one I use now, right off the bat, but it's usually a 17-pound.
They're both amazing.
Yeah, they're good. You can't, I mean, get you a good monofilament or fluorocarbon line. Use good line. It does matter. Usually, you know, you get a cheap line, it don't last as long. Usually I'll use my line for a couple seasons and, you know, don't get brittle on me. So, but yeah, get you a good line. Like I said, I typically go with about a 17-pound monofilament. But yeah, that's about it for the Baitcaster. I think I covered pretty much everything. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll try to answer that and get back with you. But yeah, have a good day. That's the end of my that's the end of my instructions.
Alright guys, what I'm going to talk to you about today is the spin cast reels, okay? Lawson pretty much touched on the rods and how the actions of the rods work. I will say one thing about the rods before I get into the reels though. I myself prefer a one-piece rod over a two-piece rod. And the reason I say that is because there's been times in the past where I'll be out fishing and I'll be casting, doing a lot of bass fishing, casting, you know, and the rods come apart. So I'm constantly having to make sure that those rods are together. So that for that reason, I like the one-piece rods. But now if you got like a small car or something like that, and you want to use a two-piece rod, you can break it down and put it in the back seat easier, and that is an advantage to that. So that's pretty much all I'll say about the rods. I'm on the same plane with Lawson. I like the monofilament. I'm a monofilament guy. Grew up with it. I had some issues with spider wire mainly. My spider wire braid, I didn't really care for that. So it kind of gave me a bad taste on all braids. But I do have braid on this Baitcaster here. So I'm coming around, you know, getting a little bit of new technology to me. Okay, let's talk about the spin cast. The spin caster is the reel that you cut your teeth on most likely. Okay, most kids will start off with this type of spin caster. Okay, and what this is, we call this a closed face. And the way a closed face works is you push the button, it releases the line, and then when you reel, there's a rod in there that pops out, and that rod will catch that line and wrap it around the spool on the inside, and that's what brings your line back in. My experience with these is great for kids, but if you don't have line tension, that rod will miss that line, and you have a lot of issues reeling back up. So I myself I would suggest you start your kids out on a closed or an open face, because the only thing that they have to know how to do is open this bell and hold that with their finger, and when they let go, it lets the bait go. Okay, well, I'm on that. Let's go ahead and talk about that. This is one of the things that I think is better than the Baitcaster. I could let this bait fall and you will not get backlash. Okay, and that's the thing. That's one of the big differences between spin cast and bait cast, is when you throw a Baitcaster, as Lawson said, you had to put your thumb. It's good to keep your thumb on the spool to keep it from over spooling and give you a bird's nest. Okay. This, when you release that line, you don't have to touch it. It won't overspin. Okay. So with it not overspinning, you don't get the backlash that you get with the baitcasters, and that's nice. And that's why I use these mainly for creeks. Okay. The creek fishing with these, you're not usually throwing super long cast. Normally when we're in the creeks fishing, we're well, even if you're on the bank, you throw the other bank and it's not going to be that long of a cast. You know what I'm saying? It's just not normally. But we like to get into the creeks, get down the middle of them, and when you're in the middle, you cut your casting distance in half. So with these, that's why I like these in a creek over baitcasters. Baitcasters, to me, is a little challenging to throw a lighter bait, and it's challenging to throw shorter distances. That's my experience with them, and maybe I'm not versed enough to be good with the baitcaster yet, but I think I'm all right. Okay. So they're easy to use. These are more available in your stores. Okay. If you go to the box stores, big box stores or whatever, you're going to find that you have the availability. You have a multiple choices of spin cast. Bait casters, they usually have 4 or 5. If you want a good bait caster, you'll probably want to go to an outdoor store where they specialize in the outdoors and fishing. These will do anything a bait caster will do, as far as fishing. They'll bring them in. Now, they'll bring in pretty much any fish you want. Okay. Now, the thing with this, comparing this to a bait caster, is adjustments. You have a drag on the spool, and that's pretty much it for a spin cast. Okay. Which again adds to the simplicity of use. You just take this little knob right here and you can tighten it down or loosen it up. I'll loosen it. Hear it clicking and loose. Then that allows that to spin. Why you would want to use something like that? Well, because say I've got 8-pound test on this reel. I think I have 12. But say it's 8 pound and I hook into a monster. Well, that, instead of putting all the pressure on your line and testing that 8-pound test, that now allows it to reel out some and take up a little bit of that fight, along with the rod tip. The rod tip takes some of that fight too. So with an 8-pound test, you can bring in 20 pounders. It's just you have to fight them a little longer. But that's pretty much all there is to do on a baitcaster or a spin cast. Your handles are ambidextrous, so you can just loosen this knob right here and take your handle to that side if you want to reel with your right hand. That's it. A con to the spin casters is lines. Heavier lines don't really work unless you have the bigger, bulkier, heavier reels. And for like us, creek fishing, I couldn't throw a 20-pound monofilament on here. 20-pound braid, maybe, but I've never had good luck with braid on spin casters as opposed to the monofilament. You can use braid, it's fine, but I just like the monofilament. It just seems like it works better. Let's talk prices. Price points. For a reel like this, I'm not even sure what this is. This is a combo. I got this as a Christmas gift. It's a Daiwa or something like that. Dawa, whatever. This is an awesome rod and reel. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I've had this for 3 or 4 years, and I very rarely have a spin cast last me 4 years, because I get out there, and I have done it with this. You've watched videos where I've hooked into those big Asian carps, and normally they will smoke a reel. That's the thing about another point on spin cast versus bait cast is bait casters do last a lot longer. Spin cast, you can smoke them pretty quick, especially if you use them like I do. I use them, man, I use them a lot. This has been a good one. This is still got good drag, and it's not, you know, it's not loose or anything. Price points, you can pick up anywhere in the big box stores, you know, $20 reel, easily $20 reel. You can't get a bait caster for 20 bucks. The cheapest bait casters I know of right now are about a $50 Cast King, and I have several of them, and I love them. They are a good reel for the money. They work just fine, you know. There's better quality reels than a Cast King. Did I say bait casters? I am better. Cast King. Okay. The Cast Kings, I got 3 or 4 Cast King Royales, $50 reels, and I have never had the first issue ever with those reels. But that's your beginning. You know, $50. I could buy 2. I don't know about this specific reel, but I can go out and buy 2 Abu Garcia reels or Shimano, Shakespeare, anywhere at the big box stores. I can get 2 spin casts for the price of the cheapest bait caster. And you know, there's the same thing as the bait caster. You start at 50 and you can go up, you can get $1,000 reel. Insane. Same with these. You start at $20, but you can go up to 150, 200, whatever. So basically that's about it. You know, I don't know of anything else that I can say about spin cast over bait cast. I'm not trying to sell you one over the other, just trying to give some points on what we think. Well, we were asked to do this video on why you use certain reels over other reels and what situations, and that's basically it, man. So that's all I got to say in my presentation. So thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate you being here.
What are you talking about? Creek Beaters TV? That's awesome.